Satan, the ultimate antagonist. Satan appears throughout both Old and New Testaments as the primary adversary of God and humanity. In the book of Job, he's presented as the accuser, who tests human faith. In the Gospels, he tempts Jesus in the wilderness for 40 days, offering worldly power in exchange for worship. Revelation depicts him as the dragon who wages war against heaven itself. What makes Satan particularly terrifying is his intelligence. He doesn't rely on brute force but on deception, manipulation, and exploiting human weaknesses. Pharaoh, the tyrant who defied God. The unnamed Pharaoh of Exodus represents absolute earthly power corrupted. When Moses demands the release of the Israelites, Pharaoh's response reveals his true nature. He increases their suffering and declares himself above the God of the Hebrews. Even as the 10 plagues devastate Egypt, his heart hardens further with each supernatural sign. The drowning in the Red Sea serves as the ultimate judgment on his pride and cruelty. Pharaoh embodies the danger of unchecked authority and the delusion that human power can rival divine will. Jezebel, the manipulative queen. Queen Jezebel of Israel stands out as one of the Bible's most cunning villains. She doesn't just worship foreign gods, she actively persecutes God's prophets, ordering their execution. When Ahab sulks over Naboth's vineyard, Jezebel orchestrates an elaborate frame-up, using false witnesses to have Naboth stoned for blasphemy. Her influence over King Ahab demonstrates how evil can work through manipulation and political scheming. Her eventual death, thrown from a window and eaten by dogs, fulfills Elijah's prophecy about divine justice. King Herod, the paranoid murderer. Herod the Great's massacre of innocent children in Bethlehem reveals a ruler consumed by paranoia and cruelty. Upon hearing of a newborn, king of the Jews, his response isn't investigation but genocide, ordering the death of all male children under 2 years old. This act of state-sponsored terrorism shows how fear can transform leadership into monstrous evil. Herod's willingness to murder children to protect his throne demonstrates the ultimate corruption of power when it becomes an end in itself. Judas Iscariot, the ultimate betrayer. Judas represents the horror of betrayal from within. As one of the 12 apostles, he walked with Jesus, witnessed miracles, and heard divine teachings firsthand. Yet for 30 pieces of silver, he leads soldiers to arrest Jesus with a kiss, perverting an act of love into a signal for capture. His motivation appears partly financial, as John's Gospel mentions he stole from the money bag, but the betrayal cuts deeper than greed. Judas embodies the terrifying possibility that even those closest to good can choose evil. Pontius Pilate, the cowardly enabler. Pilate's evil lies not in active malice but in moral cowardice. He recognizes Jesus' innocence, even declaring, "I find no fault in this man," yet sentences him to crucifixion anyway. His hand-washing gesture symbolizes the attempt to escape responsibility while still committing injustice. Pilate represents how evil triumphs when good people choose political convenience over moral courage. His weakness enables others' cruelty, making him complicit in the greatest injustice in human history. Cain, the first murderer. Cain's story establishes the template for human evil. When God accepts Abel's offering but not his own, Cain's jealousy transforms into homicidal rage. God even warns him that sin is crouching at your door, giving him a chance to choose differently. Instead, Cain lures his brother into a field and commits history's first murder. His response to God's questioning, "Am I my brother's keeper?" reveals not just guilt but a callous rejection of human responsibility and love. Goliath, the giant intimidator. Goliath represents more than physical threat, he embodies the intimidation of seemingly impossible evil. For 40 days, this 9-foot giant taunts Israel's army, challenging them to single combat while defying the God of Israel. His bronze armor and massive spear symbolize the overwhelming nature of evil that makes people feel helpless. David's victory demonstrates that apparent invincibility can be overcome through faith and courage, but Goliath's psychological warfare shows how evil uses fear as its primary weapon. Delilah. In the Bible, Delilah symbolizes betrayal, disloyalty, and temptation, having succumbed to the Philistines' bribery to discover and reveal the secret of Samson's strength in exchange for money. She represents the personification of evil, the deception that arises from corrupt relationships, and the danger of succumbing to seduction, resulting in the downfall of a man of divine purpose. Haman, the genocidal schemer. In the Book of Esther, Haman crafts the ultimate evil plan, the complete extermination of all Jews in the Persian Empire. His motivation is petty, Mordecai's refusal to bow, but his response is monstrous. Haman manipulates King Ahasuerus through lies, bribes, and appeals to royal authority. He even builds gallows specifically for Mordecai's execution. Haman represents how personal grudges can escalate into systematic evil, and how bureaucratic systems can be weaponized for genocide. Nebuchadnezzar, the prideful destroyer. King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon destroyed Jerusalem and exiled God's people, but his evil runs deeper than military conquest. He demands worship of a golden statue, throwing those who refuse into a fiery furnace. His pride reaches such heights that he claims credit for Babylon's glory, declaring he built it by my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty. Only divine judgment, 7 years of madness living like an animal, humbles him enough to acknowledge God's sovereignty. Ahab, the weak-willed king. King Ahab's evil manifests through spiritual compromise and weakness. He marries Jezebel, allows her to introduce Baal worship to Israel, and permits the persecution of God's prophets. When Elijah challenges him on Mount Carmel, demonstrating God's power over Baal, Ahab still doesn't fully turn from evil. His sulking over Naboth's vineyard and allowing Jezebel to orchestrate murder shows how weakness can enable greater evil. Ahab represents the danger of compromising with wickedness. The serpent, the original deceiver. The serpent in Eden introduces deception to human experience. His approach to Eve is sophisticated. He questions God's word, has God indeed said? Contradicts divine truth, you will not surely die, and appeals to pride, you will be like God. This three-pronged attack, doubt, denial, and pride, becomes the template for all future temptation. The serpent's curse to crawl on his belly symbolizes how deception ultimately leads to degradation. Balaam, the corrupt prophet. Balaam presents a unique form of evil, spiritual gifts corrupted by greed. Though blessed with prophetic abilities, he repeatedly attempts to curse Israel for money from Balak, king of Moab. Even when God forces him to bless Israel instead, Balaam later advises the Moabites to seduce Israelite men through sexual immorality and idol worship. His donkey speaking to rebuke him adds irony to his corruption. Even animals can be more morally aware than spiritually gifted humans who choose evil. The Antichrist, the final deception. Revelation describes a future figure who will deceive the world through false signs and wonders. This beast will demand worship, persecute believers, and establish a global system of control. The Antichrist represents the culmination of all previous biblical villains: Satan's intelligence, Pharaoh's tyranny, Jezebel's manipulation, and Nebuchadnezzar's pride combined into one final deception. The mark of the beast symbolizes total allegiance to evil disguised as progress and unity. These villains share recurring characteristics: pride that rejects divine authority, the abuse of power over the vulnerable, deception that corrupts truth, and the belief that ends justify means. They often start with seemingly small compromises that escalate into monstrous actions. Most disturbing is how they frequently believe their evil serves a greater good: Pharaoh protecting Egypt, Herod preserving stability, Pilate maintaining peace. The Bible's portrayal of evil is sophisticated, showing how it operates through political systems, religious corruption, personal relationships, and individual choices. These villains aren't cartoon characters but complex figures whose motivations and methods remain relevant today. Understanding their patterns helps recognize similar dangers in our own time, while their ultimate defeat points to the hope that evil, no matter how powerful it appears, cannot ultimately triumph over divine justice and love.